Greetings and welcome to this episode of the Heal and Restore podcast with your host,
Well, that was a
Mr.
Slurpee.
What kind of slurping thing was that? What was that all about? Taking a deep breath, slurping at the same time?
Be careful, you'll choke there.
Yeah, I do that quite often.
Sorry,
So
that was just funny to me.
yeah, it was. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was kind of funny. I
Yeah.
didn't know I did it really.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
but
who are we?
I'm Randy, and this is the hostess with the mostest, Mrs. Cathy Boyd.
Good weekly Monday morning, wherever you are.
Wherever
Maybe
you
it's Tuesday or Wednesday when you're listening, but
Whatever
welcome.
it is, whatever time of the day it is, and whatever day it is.
Welcome.
Welcome, glad you're here.
Yeah,
So, again, this is April, which is Child Pre Prevent Child Abuse Month,
that's right.
right? And this is going to be
Our last
our
episode.
last episode on that. And it's actually going to be one that, I say all the time to Kathy and a lot of the people that I know pretty tightly that people have no idea um, of the effects, long-term effects
Hmm.
that unresolved trauma has in a person's life.
Right.
We go around thinking everything's cool. We got this together. It's just who I am. If you don't like it, too bad. Boy, we got some news for you today.
Yeah, yeah. So this month we've talked on a couple of topics around childhood trauma. We talked about breaking the silence. We talked about how prevention starts at the home when we're talking with our children. And today we're going to close out with one that we see. It's very, very common. It was very common in our marriage.
100%. Yeah.
We see it in several of our clients as well. And we're going to call this episode When the Past Comes Home, How Unresolved Childhood Trauma Affects Our Marriages.
Wow.
That's a lot.
It's a lot, and it's very true.
Yeah. So the whole purpose of this podcast is we want to make sure that you, the listeners, can recognize how unhealed wounds from your childhood show up in your adult relationships,
And
and then how we can start heal together.
exactly. And the interesting thing about a lot of these effects, there's been some studies that came out here in the last year, I think it was, that a lot of the effects don't start manifesting until your 40s, 50s, and
Yeah.
60s. And they'll come out in a marriage, things start going sideways, and go, what's going on?
Right.
So this is going to be really important.
Right. Yeah. So we just welcome you to tune in and listen. Like we always say, take what you want, leave the rest. But if this resonates with you, we invite you to really just stick to the very end because we do have some helpful call to action tools that will help you. And also, just as a reminder that we are here to help you as Heal and Restore Counseling. We do still have our 1 hour coaching discovery session that allows us to get to know you. You get to know us. We can tell you about our program and see if it's a right fit. So we want to make sure that, if anything that is said here resonates with you and you feel like you need to get on a healing journey, to definitely please reach out to us. And you can find us at our website at healandrestorecounseling.com. So this really affects us. This whole title of, unresolved childhood trauma affecting our marriages. It happened to us.
Yeah, 100%.
And it probably was like maybe 20 years into our marriage.
Yeah,
I think it was happening, but we were still having fun, having children, building a family.
we just thought it was part of life, we don't get along.
Right, right. So over a period of time, though, it definitely started to take a toll, not only on you, but on me as the spouse of a surviving trauma person.
I'm gonna say kind of one thing right here is that if you have a spouse it could be the wife, the husband, or boyfriend, girlfriend that appears to be drinking a lot, and they say they can't stop.
Mm.
You need to understand that the alcohol, the addiction is not the problem, right? So that's when you got to start questioning, alcohol, drugs, sex, gambling, pornography, whatever it is, it's only a symptom. You need to understand it's just a symptom of some much deeper underlying issues that have not been addressed.
And those are those traumas.
Those are those traumas.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So we just want to kind of give you this idea to kind of resonate with, ponder over. It's our earliest wounds often show up in our closest relationships.
100%.
So our earliest wounds often show up in our closest relationships. So kind of let that marinate in your heart.
And I think that's because in a lot of ways we start feeling very safe with our spouse, right? or a partner or a boyfriend or girlfriend. And so they're the ones that take the blunt of it in our relationship.
Yeah,
Kathy
definitely.
knew about my trauma, my
But I didn't
childhood.
know what that would even
Right.
entail,
And
really.
I didn't even know how bad it
No, I
was.
don't think you do. I don't think anybody
No.
has an
Mm-mm.
idea of what it's going to be. You tend to manage it the best you can till you can't manage it any
Yeah, I
longer.
mean, it's just we go around this attitude. It's just who I am, and if you
Hmm.
don't like it, too bad.
Right.
Well, no,
Yeah.
it's not who you are.
Yeah.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
what's happened to you, and we allow what's happened to us to define who we are.
And
And
to overcome, yeah, to just take hold of you. Yeah.
exactly, and
Yeah.
our abuse or trauma is not who we are. It's just something that happened to us.
Absolutely. So in this episode, we've got four different segments we're going to cover. And the first one we're going to talk about is childhood trauma doesn't stay in childhood. And then we're going to talk about how it shows up in our marriages.
Mm,
And then we're going to get to the trauma triggered dynamic.
mm,
What does that look
that's
like?
big in marriage.
Yeah. And then we're going to talk about healing as a couple
Yeah.
because healing is possible in as a couple. And so it's really important. So
Hey, we'll talk more about it, but you need to understand that the healing process is not a one and done.
no, this is a
It's
lifelong commitment.
100%. You're going to learn behaviors and tools that you must practice for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And we say must practice, they'll become such a
Hey,
natural way of living that you won't even be thinking about them after a period
no,
of
it's
time.
like it's like I used to hear you have to live the steps. What are you
Yeah.
talking about? It's a new way of life that
Yeah.
just becomes ingrained in you. You're
We change
constantly working on it,
we
modifying
change our old way of,
it.
of living to a new way of living
Yeah.
that becomes our life.
Yep.
So let's just start in on this first one
Let's get
here.
them.
Childhood trauma doesn't stay in childhood. So, some of the examples of what that might look like is abandonment.
Hmm.
There could have been emotional neglect, abuse, typical household dysfunction, which we
Hmm.
see in a lot of families.
Here's something that's really important that people need to understand. If you're in a house, right, and not maybe you're not being abused, but you're watching your mom or your
Hmm.
brother or your sister getting beat and abused all the time, it has a
And
tremendous
I just want to
it
clarify,
has a tremendous effect on the non-abused person.
right?
Emotionally, there's a fear that's instilled with them, and
Yeah,
it's been proven psychologically.
right.
Yeah, a lot of times they suffer worse than
But I want to go back on what you said on getting beat. It's not just getting beat.
no, it's
There's verbal
verbal.
and emotional that goes on in the house. How are people talking
Uh,
to each other in the house that
uh,
creates the dysfunction? So it's really, really important. Randy's passion is so when he speaks on that, it's because that's his
yeah.
experience.
And the emotional abuse, like Kathy says, it can actually be a lot more damaging. I
Hmm.
mean, usually it's you see a lot of emotional abuse going on, and the physical abuse is
Yeah,
usually tied to it.
it's
So
yeah, they do connect. And then the other thing I think that's really important when we talk about childhood trauma not staying in childhood is that the body and the nervous system, they remember what the mind forgets.
100%.
And we've had situations with people we know that they don't remember if they were abused or what the trauma was, but their body and their actions and the way that they respond to things is what they feel.
And what will happen is this when they start the journey, and this has been a lot of the sexual abuse people, but in all kinds of
And
trauma, right?
traumas, yeah.
They've repressed them to the point, and then they start feeling these feelings that they hadn't
Mm,
felt for a long time because they did repress it. And it's the one thing that we say is your body will never lie to you.
no,
Your body knows, right?
yeah.
Certain situations, and it's gonna you've just got to recognize those keys.
Things will start feeling and sounding, and it'll be familiar.
It'll
You'll
be,
have it.
yeah,
It's a familiar effect for
right.
sure.
It you never know when that's going to come up.
Right.
I mean, we had one client that I wasn't abused, bad control issues, and okay, and we just let it go. And something happened along the way on social media where somebody connected with her, and all of a sudden,
Things click.
all the memories came
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay,
Yep.
and that's where the control issues
Yeah,
came from.
definitely. And then the other thing in this category is that childhood messages that we carry from our adulthood into, or from our childhood into our adulthood, things like I'm not safe, I'm not lovable, I'm never going to amount to anything. You're just an idiot. I hate that word, but
I know you.
I don't like it. But those are the words that sometimes we hear as children, and a lot of things you heard as a child. And it's very common, and we find this in our clients as well, that all of a sudden we'll be having a conversation and prompt a question, and they'll you could just see their whole body demeanor change because all of a sudden they realize that their actions as an adult are truly being affected by how they were as a child,
As a child,
how they were treated as a child.
it's their behavior and it's ingrained in us. I
Mhm.
mean, when I when I met Kathy, we had a great time and I
Mhm.
felt confident in myself. But as time went on, nothing Kathy did.
Right.
I started not believing in myself. I
Mhm.
mean, we're two very successful people. I have a
Yeah.
very successful construction company. I've really never, I mean, I hate to use this word, but I've never failed at anything I've done. Anything I put my mind to, I've done.
Mhm.
But behind the facade, I thought I was
You
worthless.
were still
I was
struggling.
struggling to believe in
Yeah.
myself. And then if something good happened, something bad was going to come right behind it.
Mhm.
It's like that's not true. But when you grow up with
The words.
yeah, well, the words, and then like you get, like for instance, you get all these presents and a lot of good gifts, and then boom, you're being abused. And then you're getting all these presents because they're trying to buy your love
Mhm.
back, and then you
Yeah.
get abused again.
It's a very
So
passive aggressive
yes,
mindset.
very much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, you carry that stuff into your adulthood. I
Yeah.
mean, that's eventually why, I had the affair
Right.
because I didn't think I was good enough for
Right.
Kathy.
No, 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 that's true.
She showed me love that I've never been seen, that I never saw before.
Right. And we're going to talk about
Yeah.
how this all ties in and how it shows up in our marriage. So some of the common patterns of how things show up in our marriage is there's that fear of abandonment or intimacy. Or I'll say even not intimacy, depending on the situation, it can be over intimacy, that because of that abandonment, you cling to.
Yeah, it's either
It's either one extreme or another.
100%, right? So the fear of abandonment is huge in a relationship. Um, And again, our experience with working with clients, it starts all the way back in their
Hmm.
childhood. They were, and people don't look at it that way. I mean, if a person's been adopted, there's that chance of abandonment coming up in their
Hmm.
life.
If
As
they
a
grew up in a fatherless home.
fatherless home, right? Or let's say an absentee father home, right? Um, there's that abandonment there. There's so many signs of abandonment that happen in a childhood that people are unaware of.
Yeah.
So then we get in a healthy relationship, and one thing goes wrong, and goes, they're gonna leave me.
Hmm.
Right there it goes. I'm not worthy of another person is telling me I'm not worthy of being loved or being part of their life.
Yeah, no, it's so, so true. And then another common pattern of how things show up in our marriage is control issues or emotional shutdown. I will be one of the first to say, and Randy will probably back me up on this, is that he was very controlling for a good portion of our marriage, and that was a result
Oh
of
yeah.
his trauma.
But and then what happened as a result, you became very
Well,
controlling,
exactly.
extremely controlling.
Yeah, because there was a lot of fear. There was fear that was,
Hmm.
fear for myself. And so how I protected myself was to try to control situations and circumstances.
And that's something that Kathy really didn't, and I didn't really see
Mm-mm.
until we got in recovery. And
Yeah.
Kathy still has to work on that
Yeah.
because these things become ingrained in us, and we don't think we think it's just part of who we are. Well, what do you mean I'm controlling?
Hmm. Right.
But we got to that's where we have to take a really hard look at ourselves and become rigorously honest
Right.
with
This
ourselves.
is where self-discovery is so key to your
100%.
healing. Yeah. And then another area another pattern for how these things show up in our marriage is trust struggles, even with a safe spouse.
Even with that,
And
that
you've experienced that. And I know there's a couple different parts of these segments where this applies. And
it,
for you, it was, I'm going to hurt you before you're going to hurt me.
yeah, it's because I didn't feel that. I didn't feel I deserved the love that nobody ever loved me the way Kathy loved me.
Mhm.
Unconditional love, it was just like she was actually everything that I ever wanted in a wife was Kathy.
Mhm.
But somewhere along the line, I was trying to change her. It just became, and even in our relationships, it's called self-sabotage.
Mhm.
Almost, I would say 90% of our couples, one or both of them are great at self-sabotaging the relationship because all of a
It's
sudden they got their knight in shining armor
mhm.
or their queen that's just like taking care of them and it's true love. It's like, no, this is too good. This can't be true. So at a subconscious level, we start doing things to sabotage the
And we
relationship, to
feel like
push them away.
but we feel like we're protecting ourselves in that
Exactly. We
process,
don't realize that we're pushing our
pushing
partner
people
away.
away. Yeah. Yeah. And then the other one, I can honestly say that I fell into this category with the trauma in our
Mhm.
marriage, and that was the people pleasing.
Yeah.
Over apologizing, not so much. That's something I'm working on. But avoiding conflict, yes, I was really good at that. So I would people please to the point where I would avoid conflict and I would do whatever you wanted, just to keep the peace.
It's
And
funny
that wasn't healthy for me.
on that over apologizing. You see it all the time. People will apologize to you for what? I mean, it's like they bump into, oh, I'm sorry. They, there's no reason to apologize to me. Or I walked in front of you. I'm sorry. Say, you don't have to apologize.
Yeah.
You didn't do anything to me.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of over apologizing in this world. And
And I think people start doing that at such a subconscious level, but it probably goes back to an experience somewhere in their life, childhood, early adulthood, a bad marriage, bad relationships, whatever it is, where they've had that desire to constantly like feel like they're, oh, I'm sorry. I'm
well,
sorry. I'm sorry.
as a kid growing up, watching mom and dad just always like scared to death and apologizing for all
Right.
the little things,
Yeah.
or having an overprotective mom that every time you do something wrong, you need to go tell them you're sorry. I mean,
Hmm.
there's a lot of reasons. We're not taught as children how to deal with adversity and
Yeah.
making mistakes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it just creates all these bad, and that's part of trauma,
Hmm.
right? We're
Yeah.
not taught.
Yeah. No, no, that's good. And then the last one in this segment of how it shows up in
Um,
your marriage is, why does my partner trigger me? And it's a past wound that's
it's
speaking.
100%. The one thing that Kathy and I emphasize with our couples, you need to start learning what your triggers are
Hmm.
and naming them and owning them
Hmm.
and say, that's a trigger for me. So that one, you can start working on not letting that trigger get you because it's not from your past. It's something from your past that's
Right.
not happening right now, but
Hmm.
it's the trigger is something that reminds you of your past, right? Or we also want your partner to know or your spouse to know that, hey, this kind of stuff triggers me. So
Right.
so your partner or spouse can start working on not using that verbiage and that
Right.
language.
Yeah, absolutely. So just as a reminder, a trigger is just a wound that hasn't been healed.
That's all it is.
And so
Exactly.
the
Well,
triggers aren't bad.
no.
We've got to know what they are to heal them.
So,
So,
hey, I'm not going to be sensitive about your triggers. You hear all this garbage stuff out there about you. Look at triggers need to be brought to the surface so that
mhm.
we understand them, so that we can help each other work through them.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I think it might be a little bit here. Trauma trigger dynamic. Right?
Yeah, that's our next episode
Right.
is the trauma trigger dynamic. What does that look like? And, we talk about triggers a lot with clients, and usually they're unmet childhood needs that
100%.
become unmet expectations as well. And this is something that we're discovering quite a bit. And we've shared this before when you first start dating or you first get into a relationship and then you're going to get married. We never talk about expectations. So we
No,
basically go through most of our relationship with these unmet expectations
indeed, yeah.
and needs that end up being, because we're not talking about them,
So
there's times where triggers
in
are
the
created.
way that might look is just like, Kathy and I, when we got together, it was just like a match made in heaven. We both enjoyed doing the same things. We liked being with each other. We were falling in love. Bubbles and unicorns and rainbows were surrounding us every day. Yeah, we had our mishaps, but it's like that's all we're thinking about is we're falling in love. And even if a red flag might pop up,
Mm-hmm.
right? We ignore it. It's like, she's got so much other, or he's got so many other good traits about him. And that's something that we can work on, or maybe it'll go away, or I can change, right?
Mm-hmm. But a
But
lot of these, they start when
they, they,
from a childhood.
they start from a child. So
Yeah.
therefore, we never sit down before we get married and say, hey, I want to marry you.
Yeah.
I'm madly in love with you. I want to spend the rest of my life. But I think this is something very important that you and I need to do. I want you to write down your expectations out of a marriage and out of a husband
What,
and what
yeah.
your needs are. And I need to do the same thing. And then we can come together and talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's something, we're working with our couples to start doing. And then when we do pre-marriage counseling, it's something we're going to
Implement as well.
Definitely implement
Yeah.
it because unset expectations and needs are death in
Yeah.
a marriage.
Yeah. Though we circle around. It's just like circle, circle, circle.
Right.
It's a big trauma circle.
Well, we think, well, he's got my crystal ball. I mean, one thing I used to tell Kathy, what do you want for dinner? You know what I want? Just make something. Right. But here's the deal about that though. Kathy wasn't what she wanted to do was please me.
Yeah.
She knew what I liked, but
Yeah.
she was asking, what do you want?
Right.
I
Right.
can make you 1,000 different things, but is there something you want special tonight?
Yeah. Yeah. Here's another one in the trauma trigger dynamic that it really gets to me is reacting to a spouse as if they were a parent who hurt or failed you.
Oh God.
So I will share that there have been many times in our marriage, not in the recent years, but in the past years before we got into recovery and before we got into our true healing journey, where I did something that reminded Randy of his mom. And so I would hear, okay, Judy, and that hurt. That was
Mhm.
really, really painful. And all he was doing was reacting to his own pain, but you weren't healthy enough to be able to realize what that was. And so he acted out on me based upon his own pain.
So
And
here,
so
here
that was a trigger that then became a trigger. It's your trigger that now became my trigger. So now he's got one trigger, but now it's been past another trigger added to that.
that's one of the things that comes back to not being heard and
Hmm.
losing your voice as a kid. So here's a real life example. Right after I shut the business down, Kathy was our sole breadwinner. We were okay financially. She agreed to it. That's what we had to do. And I was paying the bills one day. They were tight. I called Kathy in the office. Said, can I go over these bills with you? And Kathy's always got a half full cup, right?
Hmm.
And she looked at it. She goes, don't worry about it. We're going to be fine, which we always were. But man, it didn't sit good with me. So she walked out into the living room, was reading the book in the reclining chair. I sat in there for another 20 minutes stewing over what she said and didn't say. And I walked out in the living room very calmly. I says, hey, Kath, I didn't like the way we ended the conversation about the finances. Can we please talk about it? And she says something she said to me before and never bothered me. But she said this to me. She goes, no, not now, but we'll talk about it later. And I mean, I went nuclear.
Hmm.
I lost it in a way. I mean, you'd think I'd had a gallon of Jack Daniels in me the way I acted,
Bad
right?
behavior.
So when it was all said and done with, I said, what in God's name was that about?
Yeah.
When Kathy said that to me, I didn't hear Kathy, I heard my mother.
Hmm.
And my mother's answer was always not now, later, which meant never.
Right.
And I didn't even know I had that trigger in me. So, and this was, well, almost 9 years in recovery. I was writing my book when that happened.
Oh, I was
That was
thinking it was
that.
much earlier, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah. So this is
it
the
was
waste of our
midway.
recovery, right?
Yeah.
So these things are going to come up. There's a saying in recovery, more is going to be revealed.
Hmm.
And believe me, it's not going to be good what's revealed. It's going to be mostly some of your character defects.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I mean, I was able to hone in on, and I went and told Kathy, I go, babe, I'm sorry. But when you said that, I don't know, I heard my mom, not you. And I
Yeah.
explained to her why. And we had to work on it, but
Right.
those are some of the things your spouse blows up at you something that's so
Yeah.
stupid,
Yeah.
right? Why?
Right. And that kind of ties into this next category here of rescuing, fixing, and walking on eggshells due to unresolved trauma. So for me, when Randy was triggered, like I said,
Hmm.
he was triggered, which then triggered me, and now I've created another trigger. I was constantly early on in, I wouldn't say in our recovery, still into our recovery a little bit because I had to work through this. But prior to that, definitely rescuing, trying to fix, and walking on
You're
eggshells.
always walking on eggshells,
Yeah, always walking
always.
on eggshells because I didn't like conflict. I didn't like him being upset. And all of this was
It's
anything that was triggering him put me into my own little trauma trigger.
and, it was nothing to do with Kathy.
No.
It was all those past traumas that just started rearing their ugly head. And what it was doing was I was focusing on all the what I perceived all the negative that Kathy was spewing on me.
Hmm.
She wasn't spewing. She was reacting to my bad behavior at a
Yeah.
certain
Your
point.
traumas, yeah.
I mean, I it's like when I had the affair, I said, well, she wasn't loving me the way I wanted to be loved. And I think I wanted to be loved. I think about 2 years into my recovery, I had an epiphany. I said, for God's sake, Randy, she wasn't loving you the way you wanted to be loved because you weren't loving her the way she
Right.
needed to be
Oh, that's
loved.
true.
So how can I expect her to reciprocate or give me something that I wasn't reciprocating?
Yeah,
It,
no.
it just it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's just, one person's trauma trigger can create another trauma
Right.
trigger in another person. And that's
Exactly.
something we developed through our marriage. And then the other one that this is really tough, not impossible to heal through, but a really
It's
tough one
hard.
is when both partners bring trauma into the marriage. And I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't know what has happened in our world,
Mm.
but it's getting more and more common that both partners, whether it's a husband and wife or they're just a boyfriend, girlfriend, they have past traumas. I don't, and this is just, I know you have said it, and I'm the glass half full that, oh no, it's not that way, but none of us get out of life without
That's
any form of trauma. And so we're seeing more and more of that in our marriages with people that we're working with and having to work through those traumas with them.
so a simple trauma reaction not related to abuse. Okay.
Hmm.
So let's say you're a teenager. Right? You're driving down a freeway and you get in a bad car accident,
Hmm.
right? So now you're an adult. You and your spouse, your partner, you're driving down the highway and you're sitting in the passenger seat and a car swerves in front of you. You don't hit it, but really gets close and you go ballistic. You start screaming and yelling, "God damn," whatever it is, right? It wasn't that moment that happened. That was a response to what happened because she was triggered by what that car did.
Hmm.
And that's a reminder of what happened years ago
Yeah.
when she got in that bad car accident, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be abuse,
No. It can
but
traumas come in
trauma,
all shapes and sizes.
100%. So,
Definitely.
yeah, we talk about abuse a lot because it's very rampant in this
Hmm. In a
throughout
world.
the world,
Yeah.
right? So, but there's also the non-abusive types of trauma that we have
People
to,
experience. Yeah.
right, right.
Absolutely. And then we're going to close out on our final segment here. And this is the peaceful one for me. It's healing as a couple. We, the healing as a couple is possible. As I mentioned at the
A lot
top
of
of the
work.
podcast, there's work that's involved. If you feel like there is healing that is needed, please reach out to us. We're here to help
100%.
you at Heal and Restore Counseling. But the biggest thing is the awareness. Awareness is the first step.
Has to be, yeah.
We have to name it without shame. We have to say, you know what? My marriage is struggling right now and not feel shameful about that.
No, no,
We have to say, you know what? I've had some experiences in my past that are affecting my marriage and do that without shame.
right.
We have to be able to say, it's affecting my entire family. My children are acting out and name it without shame.
There's one step in AA. I'm going to modify the words a little bit. I'll say how it is. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol and our life had become unmanageable.
Hmm.
So here's what we got to do. The only step that has to be done perfectly is
Hmm.
it's the first step.
Yeah.
That's what they say, right?
Begins with
So
A.
we admit that I was traumatized, that I was abused, and my life had become powerless because of it.
Yeah.
Okay, you have to admit that.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't want to admit it. They think it's a sign of weakness, and I'm telling you right now, it's not. It's a sign of extreme courage and strength. We know what it takes. And after when we do a discovery session, that's the one thing that we always say. You took the first step.
Hmm.
Thank you. That shows a tremendous amount of strength
Right.
and courage on your part. And we want to honor people because it does take a lot of strength and
It
courage.
really does. It really
Right?
does. And without that first key of awareness and that first
It's
key of admitting, all we're doing is prolonging our pain. We're
it,
prolonging our struggle. And so taking that first step is key to starting a healthy journey, not only for
it,
yourself, but then we talk about the generational curses, breaking
absolutely.
those as well for your family.
Kathy, we're talking about Kathy and I have a plethora of life experience with trauma and marriage and business, all sorts of stuff.
Hmm.
I have the academic stuff too, but it's the life awareness that we have
Hmm.
that's helping
It's very
people.
relatable. Very
And
relatable.
that's what it takes. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah,
We don't shame. That's
no,
what the last thing we do. We don't shame. We don't judge. We're non-biased.
we've been
No
there.
condemn. We've
We,
been
how
there.
can we?
It's,
It's
I'll
not
tell you
something
how we
we,
look at it. We show them the love of Christ.
yeah,
That's exactly
absolutely.
what we do.
Absolutely. So, healing as a couple, it is going to require therapy. It can be couples counseling. Sometimes
Coaching.
it's individual coaching. And what we do that I love about
Yeah.
this is in our 12-week program is we give you 12 weeks. We do, if it's a couples, we will do couples. And then at any given moment during that 12
All right.
weeks, you feel like you want a one-on-one,
Mm-hmm.
men with Randy and a woman with myself. We do that. That's part of our program. So you might start out as a couples and then you might have a couple weeks throughout that 12 weeks where you do individual.
Yep.
And we actually embrace that because there's a lot of times where either a man needs to just speak or a woman needs to speak. And so it's all part of that journey because we believe that, and we've always said, the relationship, the marriage is not broken. It's the individuals that are bringing their past experiences into it that are now manifesting in that relationship.
And the one thing, Kathy, and I believe in no secrets between a couple, and,
Mhm.
and, and we're not, in our one-on-one, we're not encouraging that. Sometimes a man just needs to be able to talk to a man and dump a bunch of
Right.
stuff without being judged, and vice versa with the
Mhm.
women. The hardest part, men rarely call me, and I understand that. And
Right.
we every time we encourage them, so well, you're too busy. No, we're not too busy. We say we want you to call you.
Yeah.
And Kathy has several of her women have called her,
Right.
and it's it's
Right.
it's changed the way they think. I
Yeah.
mean, we're there to help you get through every issue.
And part of that process is having hard but healing conversations. We
100%. And
can't
loving
we
conversation.
can't we can't change what we don't talk about. We can't change what we don't admit. We can't grow through those changes if we're not having these conversations. So
And
it's definitely something that's important. And then also the other part
but
of that,
we're not going to just pat everybody on the back.
no.
We're going to be loving,
Yeah.
caring, hard
Yeah.
conversations. But we have to tell them the truth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can't help you if we're not honest with you. And then the other part of healing as a couple is basically, this is a tough one, but it's reparenting yourself while showing up differently in your marriage. Just because you grew up in a home that looked a certain way doesn't mean your home has to look the
No, not
same.
at all.
So we learn to reparent ourselves as adults so that our marriage becomes better. It looks different than what we grew up in the marriage that we saw growing up.
In fact, one of our clients, and we interviewed him on here, he started doing the inner child work,
Hmm.
and it changed his life.
Yeah.
He actually sat down and had great conversations. And then when he would be struggling, he would sit down and do the inner child work. If you're right-handed, you talk to your inner child with your right hand, and then you take the pencil or pen, put it in your left hand. It's got to be done pencil and paper. You can't do it on a computer. And then you let the child talk back to you. It sounds
Sounds
wacky as
kind of
all.
weird,
It sounds
but
wacky,
it is a true
but
healing
man, it's
opportunity.
helped him
Yeah.
so much get through a lot of situations.
Yeah. And then the final thing, of course, in a marriage when we're working on this is how to build safety and trust together. But we do it one step at a time. Sometimes they're baby steps, sometimes they're bigger steps. But the thing is we want to move forward. Now, will we stumble and fall back?
Ah, 100%.
Absolutely, we will. We have. But when we stumble, when we have those challenges, when we're if we fall down, we get back up. But those challenges is where the growth happens. And that I'm going to be your biggest cheerleader when it comes to that.
100%.
But we have to be able to build safety and trust together, but we do it one step at a time.
Kathy and I have been married 41 years, and I wish I could sit here and tell you that those 41 years have been nothing but bliss, rainbows, unicorns, and,
Yeah.
and bubbles, right? But the key to a strong, long-lasting marriage is that you don't quit when things get tough,
Yeah.
right? I mean, sometimes it's like, do you want to be happy or you want to be right? Somebody's got to be the hero.
Right.
Sometimes we're going to dig our heels in at points, but at some
Yeah.
point, somebody's got to choose.
Right.
I'm gonna take my heels out of the sand, and I'm gonna fess up, and I'm gonna apologize to my wife or my husband, and I'm gonna make this thing work, right?
Hmm.
We can't, when things get tough, it's not the time to run.
Right. And then we do it together.
And, where else are you doing that in your life?
Yeah. No,
That's
that's
the
good.
question.
That's good. Great. So as we kind of close this out, I'm going to leave you with a thought, and I really want you to ponder this is thinking about this, this is an affirmation, is that your marriage isn't broken. Your relationship isn't broken. You're just bumping into what needs
That's
healing.
powerful.
And yeah, that is such a powerful affirmation. So it's your marriage isn't broken. You're just bumping into what needs healing. So remember that if you're struggling, you're just bumping into what needs healing, and we're here to help you. And then I'm going to give you a call to action here. So I'm going to encourage you to really think back, get yourself into a quiet space,
Hmm.
maybe put on some quiet music, and ask yourself, what part of my childhood is still speaking in my marriage? So, what part of childhood is still
That's a
speaking in my
big
marriage?
challenge. It's a hard challenge,
Yeah.
but it's going to be worth it.
And then take out your journal and share what you noticed. Share the words that are coming to your mind. Don't question those thoughts. Write them down because those thoughts are basically what part of your childhood is still speaking in your marriage. So I'd encourage you to do that. I know these are just small little action steps, but boy, can they get you started on a healing journey. So we would really love for you to do that.
Yeah, the first part, like on that journaling, what part of my childhood is still speaking in my marriage? It's real easy for us to point the finger at our partner or our spouse
Hmm.
or anybody else rather than looking inward at ourselves. Go stand in front of a mirror and go, okay, what part do I have in
Yeah.
this? Myself, right?
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to being abused, you have no part in it, right?
Right.
But if
But
you're a
your
kid,
childhood experiences, so we all have them.
right?
There's something there. So how is that affecting and what is it
It's
speaking
100%.
into your
Yep.
marriage?
Yep.
Oh, I love that.
You gotta get really honest with yourself and
Be willing.
it's gonna be tempting to point the finger. Well, it ain't me, it's him or her.
Mhm. Yeah.
What's your
Do it for
part?
yourself.
Yeah.
Do it for yourself. So this is good.
Yeah,
I love
I
this, honey.
agree.
Thank
I
you.
agree.
So just want to remind you of a couple things. This is our little house cleaning opportunity that we have all of our books available. They're on Amazon. Um, you can also purchase them through our website at healandrestorecounseling.com. If you're looking for a discovery session, if you think you might need coaching or want coaching or desire coaching, whether
I have
it's
questions about it.
or have questions about it, reach out to us through our website at healandrestorecounseling.com. We'd love to hear from you. And we'd also love to hear any comments you have about this
Yeah,
podcast. If you can, you have an opportunity to leave us a comment. We would love to hear from you. If there's anything you would love to hear more about, we would love to hear that as well. So you can always reach out to us
right.
uh, through your listening platform or through our website at
Send us an
healandrestorecounseling.com.
email.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So we would love to hear from you.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
That's it.
I've got the books.
I,
Instagram, Facebook,
yep, we're on all the social media
spot,
platforms.
TikTok.
TikTok, YouTube.
All right. So please like, and even if you don't think they'll listen, share this to at least 5 people that
Yeah.
you know in your circle.
The more we reach,
Follow
the more we
us,
heal.
and do one little tiny thing that takes 1 second. Just press the subscribe button.
Mhm.
We're not going to overwhelm you with anything. We just need the subscriptions.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So that's it.
Is that it?
That is
All right.
beautiful.
So,
We hope
yeah.
you enjoyed this month of April.
Yep.
It's a tough subjects to talk about, but it's a very important to us
It-
and
it-
important to our hearts.
we need to pull the head we need to pull the head out of the sand and start talking about this
Yeah.
stuff. Start
Start
the
the
conversation.
conversation.
Right. So, all right, everybody. Remember this: if nobody tells you they love you today, Randy does.
Kathy does.
More importantly, God does. Be blessed, everybody. Have a fabulous week.
Have a great week.